I'm Sara Price. I'm a professional off-road racer, and this is the American Athlete. Super emotional day for us. We just got our first stage win. That's racing. Like, what racer doesn't want to go for the win if you have the chance? The first sport I got involved in was horseback riding, equestrian. So I used to do show jumping, also gymkhana, and did vaulting, so gymnastics on horseback. As a little girl, I did gymnastics growing up, so it was kind of a random thing before the motorsports world came into my life, but my dad raced off-road vehicles, so that was something that I always knew about and I was around because of him. And then my brother started racing motocross, so it was kind of just natural to get a dirt bike myself, which I did at 8 years old on Christmas morning. And then it was, the rest is just history. I would say my first national, when I did my first national on a dirt bike, I was 13 years old. It was in Texas at Lake Whitney, and my dad actually had made a bet with one of the potential companies out there to be my first sponsor. And he said, if my daughter wins, you're gonna sponsor her. And they're like, okay, yeah, if she wins, we'll sponsor her. Well, I won. And so then I got my first sponsor, my first national. Then from that moment, I was hooked, and I didn't want to stop, and I always wanted to try harder and push harder. It's a very young career on two wheels. You have to start early, and you basically turn professional the day you turn 16 if you're in the right spot and you're competitive enough. You know, I didn't live the normal childhood, to say the least. My teacher traveled on the road, and that's how I went to school. That's how I got my diploma and graduated. I wouldn't trade it for anything, but the light at the end of the tunnel kind of disappeared after I medaled in X Games. There wasn't much of a future for women in motocross anymore. The series were coming to it in the end. You know, I thought, well, what am I gonna do now? You know, my whole childhood was to race this dirt bike and be the best in the world and hopefully have something at the end of it. Well, that wasn't the case, so let's pivot. After a successful career on two wheels, I retired, started a business, and then bought my first four-wheel vehicle. You know, that was a tough transition in my life as an athlete, you know, my childhood being only racing on dirt bikes, and so I kind of had to like reinvent myself and realize who I am as an actual person, not just as the athlete. But then four wheels came along and started all over. And then one day I get a call from Clyde Stacy with RPM Off-Road, and he asked me if I wanted to race one of his trucks, and this is one of the top teams in Baja. When you hear RPM Off-Road and you see an orange truck, you know whose truck that is. And so it was a big honor to get that chance, and so when I got that opportunity, I made a pact to myself that I'm going to utilize it and do everything I can to make it worth it. And we won the Baja Championships. I Ironwomaned every single mile of that series that year. So it was a 250, the 400, the 500, and the 1000. And the 1000 took me 19 and a half hours straight. And so I believe that seriously was like my big break in four wheels. And then the next phone call I get is from Chip Ganassi, do you want to race Extreme E in this new electric off-road series all around the world? And you know my answer is yes. There is nothing bigger than the Dakar Rally and off-road racing. I just didn't know how to get there. Especially as an American, we're still so detached when it comes to Dakar because it's such a European-based event. So that's always been in the back of my head. So when I signed to do Extreme E, I thought, okay, this might put me in a better position to meet people over there to really achieve, you know, my #1 bucket list item, and that is to race the Dakar Rally. It definitely helped me, you know, make connections and stuff. Then the next few years after I stopped racing Extreme E, I made a pact to myself, be like, listen, this is it, Sarah. Like, we don't know the exact way to make Dakar Rally happen, but you've been wanting it for this long. I'm just gonna go for it. And so I turned down a lot of opportunities and I made a pact with myself, we're going. I signed with Can-Am Off-Road, so I knew I had to be on their product driving a Can-Am in order to compete. And it wasn't easy, to say the least, but we worked our butts off, got to Dakar. I was blown away that we were actually in the top 3 positions almost the whole entire rally. Up until the second to last day, I got wind that potentially I could win the overall because first place I got penalized. So I went for the win, and in going for the win, I actually lost the podium. I could have just rolled around and honestly got 3rd place at Dakar my first year, which would have been absolutely amazing. But that slight glimpse of being able to go for the win, I went for it, and didn't work out. You know, we had a lot of mechanical failures and things happened that day from pushing, and it was a bummer. But at the same time, for your first Dakar to get 4th overall, and we won a stage.
And the first American female to win a Dakar stage.
And 3rd female ever to do it. It's kind of crazy to look back that since 2015 I've been trying to make that happen, and now it's happened.